I'm actually going to tag on to kind of the end of his message. I'm going to talk about why I'm all in for being all in. I'm going to start in 2 Corinthians. This is 2 Corinthians 11. This is Paul speaking. In labors more abundant, in stripes above measure, in prisons more frequently, in deaths often. 3 times I was beaten with rods, once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked, a night and a day I have been in the deep. In journeys often, in perils of waters, in perils of robbers, in perils of my own countrymen, in perils of the Gentiles, in perils in the city, in perils in the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among false brethren, in weariness and toil, in sleeplessness often, in hunger and thirst, in fasting often, in cold and nakedness. Besides the other things, what comes to me daily, my deep concern for all the churches. That sounds fun, right? Who's all in for that? And Paul was, right? Like it happened over and over and over again if you read his accounts. And he continued to preach, and he continued to do what God called him to. Why? How did he do it? Is it like, well, I mean, Austin, that's like the Apostle Paul. I mean, he's basically a biblical superhero. Like, he's got a cape. I can't be like Paul. And I think if that's the line we take, we're selling ourselves short. I think the key is in that last verse there. What comes to me daily, my deep concern for all the churches. He knew why God had put him on the earth. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche said this: he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. And the scripture doesn't specifically say, but it's generally accepted historically that Paul was beheaded by the Romans. And that was his why. He was called to graft in the Gentiles, you and me. It's the reason we're here today, is because of what he did. He lived it to the very end. He knew his why. This is Hebrews 12. Therefore we also, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. So today I want to ask you a couple questions. What has God called you to? And what has he given you to steward? So what has God called you to, future, and what has he put in your hands right now that's in your possession to steward? Because I think if we're to live the life God has for us, like that looks like something, right? Like if I want to be an Olympic athlete, I don't sit on the couch and eat donuts all day, right? Like it doesn't work. I train accordingly. And so I think it's important to ask the Lord those questions. And this could easily turn into like a rah-rah, like, are you all in? What are you going to do for God message, you know? Like, and I just don't think that's it. Like, for those of you who know me, I feel very deeply about the message of the grace of God and the deeply personal nature of your salvation. So I don't think that I can stand up here and tell you what you need to do. Because if you do it for me, it doesn't work. Like, behavior modification doesn't work, right? Like, it's not sustainable. So I think it's prudent to get alone with God and ask these questions, because that's where co-laboring with the Lord happens. Like, that's where it begins, when you start to ask these questions. It's like the parable of the talents. Are you actively stewarding what God has given you? Or do you just have it buried somewhere hoping God's going to multiply it? So today, I encourage you, and every so often, just get alone with the Lord and ask those questions. God, what have you given me to steward? And what have you called me to? And help me be all in for those things.